Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. Crimson Desert has finally been released on PC and consoles.
Just get over it, stupid!
I tried my best to get a review key for this game and prepare the content for the release, but unfortunately I wasn't successful. However, I still managed to get a review code from Pearl Abyss a couple of days ago, which was obviously not enough time for me to make a review for the release dates. Well, not yet at least. I barely got any sleep since I started playing it, so I can at least bring you my first impressions for this highly anticipated action-adventure, which I covered in the past more than a couple of times. I explored the first zone quite a bit, pushed the story forward, and got to the point where I unlocked another playable character. So I think I got a good grasp of the game in general, even though I just scratched the surface. The game is simply massive and it will take some time for me to complete it and make a full review, but I won't try to rush it. I played the game on my PC with an Xbox controller, but I also tried using a PS5 controller as well. Anyways, let's get straight into it.
Just talking to myself, pay me no mind.
Crimson Desert is certainly not a game for everyone, and it has some glaring issues that will turn a lot of people away. But at the same time it also has an insanely deep gameplay and attention to detail that you have to discover by yourself because the game tells you the bare minimum. However, this is something that will push a lot of people away or even stop them from buying this game altogether. Combined with some very stiff controls and step-by-step gameplay that requires multiple button inputs for even the simplest of actions, Crimson Desert is certainly not a game for everyone. So let's address the elephant in the room straight away, before we talk about some great things this game has to offer. The control scheme is very stiff and somewhat unresponsive, which can make the whole gameplay experience extremely janky. Some of this can be justified because it's clearly by design, like the multiple button inputs for every interaction. I'm not even over-exaggerating, literally every interaction in the game requires you to use at least 2 buttons. Even when it comes to the most basic stuff like moving around, riding a horse, or even engaging in dialogue. For example, even the most rudimentary dialogue interaction with NPCs require you to use 2 buttons. My longtime subscribers will probably immediately try to make a connection with games such as Gothic 1 or even Outward to some extent. The problem is, Crimson Desert is aggressively pushing this philosophy to its detriment, and having a very stiff control scheme on top of this certainly doesn't make this game any smoother. So if you don't have a lot of patience to deal with the controls and bad user interface with layers upon layers of menus and options, you're probably going to have a very rough time with this game. This wasn't a huge problem for me personally, mostly because I immediately noticed what Crimson Desert is trying to do with its gameplay. And more importantly, because I personally enjoyed that kind of approach to open world gameplay, despite all of the issues it has. I also played a shit ton of games with terrible controls, and that certainly helps.
He won't let me ride him, but maybe he'll take a liking to you.
The thing is, this game has one of the most enjoyable explorations that I experienced in an open world game in a long time, and considering I didn't even scratch the surface, that only makes me more excited to continue playing the game and eventually do a proper review. I think this huge hype train is a blessing and a curse for Crimson Desert, because it has such polarizing features. It managed to break into mainstream with its big AAA budget, but in reality this game targets a very niche audience, considering its deep gameplay features and the lack of hand-holding. Then again, even if you're part of that target audience, you'll probably still have some issues with at least some of the features I mentioned. For example, moving around with your horse, or even on foot sometimes, especially in crowded areas, can be such a frustrating experience. Targeting NPCs and awkwardly waiting for about 5 seconds until the dialogue triggers is just annoying. This game seems to love creating problems and then presenting you with a fix for that problem, instead of just redesigning the whole feature to be more intuitive. For example, there is an item which allows you to see past memories of some places and NPCs, similar to the lamp from The Witcher 3, if you guys remember that. The way it works is that you have to equip this funny looking helmet, go through a couple of layers of menus and find the appropriate memory to play. But before that you have to use the lamp to gain the info about the memory. Then all of a sudden you can just figure out that you can press the recent menu button, which allows you to equip the helmet and play the memory automatically. So what's the point of having 2 different ways to do the same interaction other than just wasting your time? I don't know, you tell me. To put it simply, a lot of these features desperately require some streamlining, and I'm saying that as someone who bitched and moaned about the streamlining in RPGs in the last 15 years or so. The majority of these small interactions could be done with a simple press of a single button. Listen, I'm all for having a methodical gameplay within the open world itself and while interacting with things around you, but using the same principle for user interface and most basic features only makes the game more frustrating for no apparent reason. So what about the combat? Well, I'm not so sure if I like it that much, at least so far. It starts off very simple, but it quickly turns into a game where you can use and combine a lot of different abilities. The progression system seems pretty good, especially for an action-adventure, but let's be honest here, the progression system resembles a proper action RPG rather than action-adventure. It has everything that you would expect an RPG to have, except the leveling up system and manually investing points into different stats. It also seems like all playable characters have different skill trees, which is pretty damn cool. I just started playing the game a little bit with the second character you get to unlock and testing her abilities and weapons. So why I'm not sure about the combat in general? Well, dealing with basic enemies even in crowded fights is pretty easy, but this might change further down the line, I'm not sure. In my experience so far, you can pretty much spam a couple of your abilities and kill everything on the screen, as long as you have an appropriate gear for the zone you're exploring, because the game is more gear-based than skill-based, at least that's what it seems. Boss fights seem like huge difficulty spikes, but mostly because you didn't even have to invest a lot of effort into actually learning how some of these combat mechanics work. Do take in mind that I'm still early in the game and I only fought a handful of bosses. On the bright side, the boss mechanics are fair and challenging in a good way. As for some fundamental combat mechanics, I think this game has a decent sense of impacts. It feels pretty good when Cliff is performing those WWE moves or finishing off enemies with flashy animations.
It's your fear.
Although most of the time this can feel very random, even though you can have the control over those moves. I usually use a couple of them in fights, like grabbing someone and throwing them off cliffs. Yeah, Cliff throwing people off cliffs, imagine that. The game has very satisfying physics, and NPCs will bounce off solid objects or even break them. The destructible environment is a huge plus in general, and you can break a lot of things. Not only in combat, but even for gathering and crafting features like cutting down trees. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think the puzzles in this game are great, because they're not brain dead. I mean, if you're going to include puzzles in your game, I would rather have something actually worth solving than just being completely brain dead like in most games nowadays. It's yet another feature which might turn some people away, but it is what it is. Although even this gameplay feature can have similar frustrating problems that I mentioned before. The game gives you more than enough tools to overcome everything, even though it sucks at explaining things to you. But if you're willing to get yourself immersed in this game and just take your time, you're probably going to enjoy it quite a bit. I'm loving the exploration and just moving through these insanely detailed open worlds.
True? It's nonsense.
The main story seems like a jumbled mess with no real substance. But to be honest, I didn't expect much from the story anyway. I just hope it was better than Dragon's Dogma 2, which had a terrible story but similar gameplay philosophy in a lot of ways. A while ago, I even labeled Crimson Desert as what Dragon's Dogma 2 was supposed to be, but I'm not so sure about that now. I was able to enjoy some of these dialogue scenes in the game, even though it's not exactly because of the writing itself. The over-exaggerated and over-animated animations in dialogue are very entertaining because of how silly they look. However, the game has a certain edge to it, and it's not afraid to be very brutal with its presentation every now and then. I just hope this continues further down the line. But like I said before, I don't think you will enjoy this game if you're playing it only for the story. Just don't do that. There's always a chance that the story gets better further down the line, but I don't think that's going to be the case, to be honest.
True? It's nonsense.
It seems like the only purpose of the main story is to drive the gameplay systems of this crazy open world, which is fine by me. It's not like the story and quests are terrible, but they are far from being amazing. The faction system seems very interesting, but I'm still not sure how it actually works. The side content is something that I'll definitely focus on quite a bit when I continue playing the game for my full review. I will focus entirely on learning the ins and outs of this gameplay system so we can properly analyze the most important part of this game. I love exploring good open world games, and we don't get a lot of those nowadays. I mean, we do get a lot of open world games, but there is a reason why these games have a bad reputation, sadly. Good open worlds are hard to find nowadays. Crimson Desert seems like a massive playground with deep but frustrating mechanics. Despite all of the issues I mentioned, I'm still enjoying the game quite a bit, and I hope this continues to be the case. It's also worth mentioning that the game works amazing on my PC. You'll see my full PC specs on the screen right now, and I managed to run the game in 2K with all settings on high except the ray tracing option, and I used DLSS on balanced presets. The result is 0 frame drop so far. It was locked on 60 FPS and probably even more, but I'm capping the FPS on 60 because of my TV. Anyway, I hope you stick around for my full review once I'm done with the game, and tell me your opinion about the game in the comments below.
Just talking to myself. Pay me no mind.
Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.